let's take a look at how we can solve project 2. So in project 2, we're computing a test average, and the key concepts that you need to understand for this is how to get user input, and then how to calculate a result using variables. So before we begin any project, we want to think about that project and perhaps write up a couple of things about what we want to do. We don't want to start immediately writing code, because sometimes writing code can get you stuck down a rabbit trail you don't want to get stuck down. Having a good design in your head and ideally on paper before you start is the best way to ensure that you're going to write code in the most efficient manner possible. So we're going to need a way to hold 3 test scores. That'll be 3 variables. We're going to want to calculate an average, so we'll calculate the mean of the 3 test scores. So that means we need a variable to hold the sum. We'll want a variable to hold the average so that we can print it later. And then these variables, it's really up to us what type we want, but I think it makes the most sense for the tests and the sum to be integers, because normally you'll have an integer test score. And then for the average, we'll use a double so that we have the ability to have a non-integer result. It would be okay to do an integer, but we want to be a little more precise, so we're going to use a double. So here's the actual description. So we want to create a Java class called testAverage. We want to put some comments there. We're going to prompt for 3 integers, calculate the average, and then write that average out. So that would conclude the project. That's what we need to do. So let's see how we do that. So I'm going to create a new class, and we want to call it testAverage. And I do want a public static void main method because everything is going to be contained in this particular class. We'll make the font a little bigger so it's easier to see. So the first thing is I want to get user input. So that means I'm going to have a scanner. And you can see it's giving me a warning, so I will import the Java util. Now, you can see here I'm getting some other options other than java.util. I want java.util, so make sure you're not just clicking on the first quick fix, or you can also add it yourself. And then I want 3 variables to hold the test results, and I'll use ints. Test1, test2, test3. I'll have an int sum, and then for the average, I wanted a double. So now I need to get values for those test scores. So I'll ask the user to enter test score 1, and I'll put a space at the end so that there'll be a space before it's prompted. And I'll also, instead of a print line, I'll just say a print. And then test 1 is going to be scanner.nextInt. Now I'm going to do this 3 times. So I'm going to copy and paste that same code, and then I'll change the numbers on my variables. And now it should get 3 numbers. Now I want to make sure that this code works. So I'm going to run it. Test score 1 is 100, 90, 80. And that seems to work. Now just to be sure that this is correct, I'll print out the scores. And now let's run this again. 100, 90, 80. And it looks like those are correct. So now we have the scores. We know we have those scores. Now I'm going to focus on calculating the average. So the sum is going to be test 1 plus test 2 plus test 3. And then the average will be the sum divided by 3.0. And I'm using 3.0 because this is floating point arithmetic. I don't want it to do integer arithmetic for me. So now I've actually calculated the average, and I really don't need this variable. I could actually put test 1, test 2, test 3, that sum here, and then put it in parentheses and it would still work. But this would allow me to use that sum later if I wanted to do some other type of statistics. So now I'm going to display my result, and we'll print the average. And I always, when I'm done, want to close my scanner. So let's run this. Test score 1, 100. Test score 2, let's say 80. Test score 3, we'll say 90. And the average of those 3 tests is 90. Now, just to be sure we're getting a good double score, I'm going to say we have 95, 95, and 96. And then that gives us 95.3. And I could format this if I wanted, but I don't really care to. So we'll call that done. So that's our solution for project 2.